we have to realize that we cannot medicalize and biologize our way out of the deep experience of having a heart and having our hearts feel and be broken and also filled with wonder at the same time. Welcome to Soror Mystica, a podcast exploring life's mysteries and magic through its symbols.
I'm Mariana Lewis, an archetypal tarotist.
And I'm astrologer Christina Farella.
And just as the Soror Mystica guided the alchemist through his holy work, we hope to be your mystic sisters in these conversations, guiding you deeper into the symbolic life. Capturing Yinz LLC is a nature-based business that creates art and home fragrances for your life, bringing all things back to nature. Charlotte also offers sessions virtually for tarot, Reiki, and candle magic, as well as in-person classes in Pittsburgh, PA, if you happen to be in that area. You can find her at capturingyinz.com or on Instagram at capturing_Yinz. That's YINZ. I went and checked out Charlotte's website. It is so amazing. There's so many extraordinary offerings, and I'm very excited to go explore more, and you should too. Go check out capturingyinz.com. Hi, everybody. We are in the 29th episode of Soror Mystica, and today our symbol, right in time for Valentine's Day, is the symbol of the heart. But we are going to talk about it in better ways than Valentine's Day. Marketing will talk about it. So we actually don't have any big announcements for you right now, other than to tell you that we are both reading Till We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis, because that is the current book of our Cloister Book Club, which is so cool. This is actually my favorite book by C.S. Lewis, and I'm not like I'm super well read in Lewis, but I've read at least 4 or 5 of his books, and this is by far my favorite thing that he's ever written. It is so cool. I just started the audiobook like 2 days ago because I read it a few years ago. And so I'm audiobooking it this time to experience it a different way. And it's just good. It's like such a pleasant story, but it has that like gravitas to it, the way he writes it. And it's so mythological and special and cool. So we really would love if you're interested in reading some juicy books. This is a novel, by the way. It's not it's not some big philosophical thing. And it's not even Christian, honestly. It's just a retelling of the story of Cupid and Psyche. And it's extremely, extremely pretty. And we're going to break it down in the book club. So we hope to see you there. It's going to be at the end of February sometime. And you can show notes. There's links and all the stuff. So yeah, join us. How are you loving it?
Oh, I love this book. And I think that I've always been obsessed with and very curious about the Psyche and Eros myth. And so I wasn't sure, obviously you've been recommending this book to me for a while. And I was really surprised at how artfully Lewis retells this story. Basically, if you're not familiar with this book, it's a retelling of the myth from the perspective of a sister who in the Psyche and Eros myth is kind of like the evil like driver of all of the bad action. There are a couple of sisters in the original myth. So there's just one and in this retelling, and it's told from her perspective, and it's like so compassionately done. And I'm not really one of those people who's like into these fairy tale retellings from like the villain's standpoint. That's not like really my jam, but this is it's very well done and it's very moving. And just the world that he creates is very rich and vivid and weird.
It is so weird.
Yeah. So it's definitely great.
I think that what's so compelling about the retelling from the sister's perspective is that all of it happens because of how desperately she loves her sister.
Yes.
Like obsessively loves her sister to a very creepy point that is very beautiful at the same time. So
yeah. Whereas there's like in the original myth, the sisters are just so jealous of Psyche for her beauty and for the fact that she's wound up with a god and is like loved by Eros and lives in this beautiful castle place this story is just like the panic of losing connection to somebody that you have always tried to protect. And so, yeah, it's
It's
very
so good.
interesting. Mm-hmm.
So that's great. Other than that, are you reading anything good?
I have been bopping around. I've been reading the Cassandra Complex, which is a really great dive into the Cassandra myth because I've been teaching this class on prophetic asteroids, and Cassandra was one of the characters that I've been focusing on. And I was honestly, at first, it's funny starting this book. Have you read it? Have you looked at this one yet? It's like one of those, what are those Jungian, those little Jungian books called? Is it?
Oh, the Inner City books.
Yes, Inner City. Okay, so it's one of
I
those.
just posted, the Jungian Online just shared a photo of like their collection, and I got extremely nerdy and I was like, I have a collection.
I saw it. It's so it's a cute share.
It's very cute.
And so it's a little bit dated at the beginning. The author, it's written by a woman, and she's kind of like making these weird connections between like women and hysteria and like sexual frigidity.
Yeah.
And she's kind of like, it kind of feels a little bit victim blamey of Cassandra. And I'm like, what's happening here? But I gave it a chance. And she actually brings up some really rich psychological details that we can pull from Cassandra's myth. So anyway, it's very rewarding, and yeah, it's definitely interesting. And yeah, tell me what you think of her intro. I was like,
well, I'm sure. You know, a lot of them were written a long time ago.
That's like true. It felt very 70s to me, or very like 80s women's kind of like psychology study.
It's the same thing with like Sally Nichols' book about Jung and tarot, and a lot of people are sometimes like, I couldn't get through it because it kept being weird. And like, it was like written in like 1978, so we have to cut her some slack. But yeah, that sounds like it's really, really juicy.
That's cool. What about you?
I am reading. I'm still working on The Madonna Secret. Oh, and I just finished, we're going to use this book a lot today, The Thought of the Heart and the Soul of the World by James Hillman. This book I read with the Red Book Club, which is hosted by Chantel Powell. It's awesome. If you're looking for like a more Jungian-centered book club, then that's a really good one. Me and Christina kind of pop in and out different books when they have good ones. So I just read this one, and it's so weird and so good. And I actually usually don't love Hillman the way a lot of people do, because I find him to be very confusing and too like he's just like too, you can tell that he's like an intuitive type, you know, like he's just like making these enormous unconscious leaps that like he assumes people are following along, and like I didn't go there with you. I wanted to, but I didn't. And he does the same thing in this book. But
I was going to say he does this all over the beginning.
The whole thing. But I liked it this time because he didn't even try to like make a point. It's not even like he's like, here, this is a big thing we need to get so that we can move forward in psychology. He's just like, here's what the heart is. Here's what the soul is. Hope you like it. It's just some hot takes that are really fascinating. So I very much enjoyed it. And it just felt like poetry to me, like the mixture of poetry and philosophy, which honestly is where I hope scholarship goes in the next 100 years. Let's make it more poetic and less empirical. And now I'm going to get shot down by the ivory tower. So
shut up. You could take the ivory tower, Mariana. You could take it head on, and they would be scared. Don't you worry.
But yeah, I really like that. So our episode today is devoted to the heart, partially because I started reading this book and I was bombarding Christina with texts like how interesting this is. And then Christina was like, why don't we do an episode on the heart? And I was like, why are you such a genius? And so now we're here. We can put our brains exploding with thoughts to good use and share it with people. So I know you have Symbol's book entry for the heart, obviously. So I'd love to hear some of the things that it offers us to jump off with.
I love starting with this, and I hope other people find it as interesting as we do, because I just think that having like a cluster or like a little constellation of images at the beginning of a conversation helps get things flowing a little bit.
I love it.
Yeah. Okay. So again, reading from the Illustrated Encyclopedia of Traditional Symbols, the heart entry is quite long, but I'll pull chunks of it out. So The heart is the center of being, both physical and spiritual, the divine presence at the center. The heart represents the central wisdom of feeling as opposed to the head wisdom of reason.
Mm.
Both are intelligence, but the heart is also compassion, understanding, the secret place, love, charity. It contains the lifeblood. The heart is symbolized by the sun as a center of life, and the rayed sun and radiant or flaming heart share the same symbolism as centers of the macrocosm and microcosm, as the heavens and man, and as transcendent intelligence. The heart is also portrayed by the downward pointing triangle. And so we can leave that there. And I think that, yeah, that gives us a really lovely array of heart imagery. And I think that, when we kind of call the heart to mind, we have this kind of maybe more commercialized depiction of like the cartoon heart, or like
Mm-hmm.
the Valentine's Day heart, which
Mm-hmm.
there is nothing wrong with, and the heart can be thought of as a symbol of like sweetness and connection and um, yeah, relationship, or the Venusian. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
today we're going to try to tease apart, what is Aphrodisian about the
Mm-hmm.
heart, but also what is kind of like grounding and reinforcing and centralizing about the heart. So, yes, yeah. What do you think
Yeah.
about that?
I think that the heart is a very complex symbol, and we don't think of it that way. I think that, it's interesting because it's a body part. It's an organ. And we talk about it. We don't have such a rich symbolic, range of ideas with other organs as we do with the heart. Like even the brain, which we talk about a lot, it's really kind of central. The brain is the location of logos and thought and control and will and all this stuff. Like we think of that with the brain, and like the liver and the stomach and all these essential organs. They don't have this rich symbolic reach the way that the heart does, which I find to be so interesting. That the heart, for some reason, has really captured this kind of enormous archetypal imagination, and it's this such a symbol of a lot of variety, actually. Even though I think that what people would initially think of with the heart is love, right? We think of love with
Mhm.
the heart, especially that's the reason why Valentine's Day is so sent. I always sigh thinking about
Annoying.
Valentine's Day. Saint
We're
Valentine was
anti-Valentine's.
massacred, people. He was
Exactly.
killed horribly. It was disgusting. It's very very silly, and it's okay. We understand capitalism, and I don't hate that capitalism has given us a holiday where we have to like take a moment to appreciate people we love. I think that's sweet. I
Valentine's
think
Day
it's
is just a way of making people who aren't normies feel bad, and I hate it because it's rude.
You
And
have a strong opinion of Valentine's Day. Yeah. I saw this horrible reel that was like of a radio show. A person, it was like this radio show had like this couple call on, and they were trying to like mediate their problem with each other. And the woman was like, "I'm so mad because it's our first Valentine's Day together. We've been together like 6 months or something. And his mom's birthday happens to be on Valentine's Day. And he told me he's not going to do Valentine's Day with me because he's going to celebrate his mom's birthday. And what kind of man is that?"
oh
And I
God,
was
there's
like,
layers there.
wow, wow,
Yikes.
let's blow it up. We're done. We're out. We're we're over. We've lost it. We've lost the plot. Self-destruct. It's ready. We're ready for it. No, but it is a thing. So anyway, the point of the heart, and the heart being the main symbol, certainly of Valentine's Day, is that it represents love. And I think that is, I would say, a more contemporary understanding of the symbol of the heart. If we look in older stuff, the heart it's not saying it's not about love. It just has a lot more complexity than that. The heart is a symbol of, we have the love, really. I don't know where it comes from. If I can't trace the lineage of the heart being associated with love, other than like its connection to Venus and its kind of Venusian aspects, its connection to Eros. But also we have the Sacred Heart of Jesus, which we might talk about a little later, which people say is the heart is representative of divine love. And it's burning, it's inflamed because of the divine love and all of that. So there's that aspect to it.
Mhm.
But in the older concepts of the heart, it's connected to, it's the vital organ of life, of, you know, it contains the lifeblood. It is the mechanism from which not only love but deep feeling arises. And in Hillman's work, he's kind of arguing it's also a place from which we get thought, not our analytical thought that we associate with the mind, the brain, but a kind of imaginative thought,
Mhm.
a sort of soulful thought, an ensouling thought, which is very interesting. And we can probably jump into that,
Mhm.
unless
Yeah, I'm
you have any
looking,
thoughts first.
yeah, no, I think that that's all great, and there's this interesting interplay with hearts, and heartiness and heartbreak, like the, whatever. We have lots of
Hmm.
different transformations of this word, and
Hmm.
I think that what is immediately true is that the heart sits at what is basically close to the center of the body in our
Yeah.
imaginative like idea of what the body is.
Hmm.
Obviously the heart is off center. The heart is not necessarily in like our chest, but it feels like it is. And so
Hmm.
it feels like this grounding place from which warmth and life radiates out of. And I think that that is why we have these connections between the heart and the sun.
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
and I think that the sun is a symbol of kingliness and sovereignty and heroism and, boldness and vitality. And without the heart, obviously, we would not, when the heart stops beating, we die. We cannot live without
Yeah.
a functioning heart. We can
Yeah.
have parts of our liver removed. We can have, our spleen taken out. We can go through all
Hmm.
kinds of body transformations that negate you know, take away parts of our physical, but the
Hmm.
heart is really so, at the same time, delicate and also completely important to the
Yeah.
functioning of everything.
Yeah.
I also like the idea of the heart and its chambers kind of being like divided into quadrants or divided against itself. I think Hillman
Hmm.
says the heart is
Hmm.
inherently divided against itself. I think is a very, that just speaks to my Venus and Scorpio. But
Hmm.
I have a cool passage from our Hillman, "The Thought of the Heart and the Soul of the
Hmm.
World," that I want to start us off with. So this is from the Coeur de Lion section. So he's
Hmm.
talking about the heart of the lion. And he writes, the first of these hearts comes from folklore. So he basically has this idea that he's positing that there are three different kinds of hearts. One of them is about bravery. One of them is about like the kind of musculature and like
Hmm.
machine like quality of the heart. And then
Hmm.
the last one is about emotions. And so this first of the hearts, the heart of the lion, comes from folklore, astrology, symbolic medicine, physiognomy. The heart of the lion is like the sun, round and full and whole. The classical symbolisms of this heart are gold, king, redness, sol, sulfur, and heat. It glows in the center of our being and radiates outward, magnanimous, paternal, and encouraging. Ficino said that the nature of the heart is warm and dry, and that warmth has conformity with the universe. The thought of the lion warms so to life, and in conformity with the world, that its thought is one with will, displaying itself with the world, enthroned as king, yellow as daylight, loud as a roar, fixed as dogma. It's very poetic, this
I
book, and I
know,
think
it's just
that's, you were
poetry.
like texting me, you're like, you're gonna love this. Um, but so anyway, I think that there's this really fascinating idea of like centrality and power that immediately
Yeah.
comes through with the heart, which is
Yeah.
interesting because usually the heart as the center of emotions is how we think of the heart
Yep.
these days, which we associate, unfortunately, with the feminine. I think that it's not, I think that does everyone a disservice when we only
Mm.
associate emotions with the feminine and don't give
Hmm.
any to the masculine. I think that's
Hmm.
ridiculous.
Hmm.
So, there's something here that we're starting off with the king, and the heart and what it brings to us. So I'll leave that with you.
Yeah. I think that's it, that's kind of what he's saying in this book, is that we've lost the lion heart. That's like
Mm.
absolutely the one we've lost. We've really leaned into the heart of Harvey, as he calls it, the heart of its kind of
Scientific
technological.
functioning. It's
Yeah, it's like
biology. Mm-hmm.
the physiology of the heart. It works, it keeps us alive, etc. And then the heart of Augustine, that last heart, which is about emotionality and also mysticism, like the mystical heart,
Mm-hmm.
the contemplative heart. Um, and he really was leaning into this idea that the heart of the lion is gone, like it's been kind of lost in history. And he really seemed to be very sad about that. And he's like, we have to, like, how do we bring back this heart of courage, but it's also this heart of, as we said, like the centrality, the regality of being. And I think that's a very interesting idea. I think it's worth taking a moment to discuss this, the duality of the heart. We tend to, on this podcast and in general, and we're talking about archetypes and symbols, think of things in the binary of masculine and feminine. And as we've said many times on this podcast, and I've said just like forever, when we're talking about masculine and feminine, we do not mean man and woman, and we do not mean male and female, and we do not have, it has nothing to do with gender or biology or sex. It's purely archetypal. And I know that's really hard to wrap our heads around sometimes because it is complicated, and we're not trying to divorce the archetypal masculinity or femininity from people who associate with either of those or not associate with either of those. Like there's layers to it, certainly there. But when we're talking about it archetypally, I think that there is a foundational kind of archetypal way that human beings tend to categorize things in this binary of masculine and feminine, because that is our most primordial binary that we have. We have this, unconscious archetypal draw to split things up, just like we have the draw to split things up between sun and moon, because these are primordial symbols that we're always seeing. We have nighttime and we have daytime, and so there's this natural instinct to do that. And I think that when we're trying to think about what we mean by divine masculine and divine feminine, it gets mushy and it gets complicated, and then we try to categorize things very neatly, and it doesn't work that way. And I think the heart is a really good symbol of how there can be multiplicity in a symbol, in an archetype. And so in the idea of the heart of the lion that James Hillman was talking about, it feels very masculine, right? It feels, as you said, like sun and sulfur, all these things that are associated with the masculine principle, which is very active, very bright, very ego-centered. It's something that has this I don't know. There's just this vivaciousness to it that feels like it's associated with that traditional masculine element. But at the same time, today, we certainly would associate the heart with the feminine because it's associated with love, because it's associated with eros and feeling and sensitivity and emotionality. And I think it was really a great point to say, like, we can't divorce emotions from the masculine. That makes no sense, right? Because, and I really like that image of the yin yang symbol that we all love. The big mystical truth in that is that in the opposites we contain, in these two things we contain our opposite, right? And I think that that's always true. And I think it's really interesting when we find these binaries, these polarities bumping up against each other, because we're always trying to reconcile them. And I kind of like don't want to reconcile them. I love it when it's just like both and, right? Yes, both and. And so with the heart, I think that it is both a very masculine symbol and a very feminine symbol. I feel personally, this is my personal experience with the heart, I've always been very fascinated with the heart for some reason. In all my poetry and all my writings, there's always some kind of heart that shows up. And I love to describe it and talk about it bleeding and all sorts of things. I'm very Scorpio. But I have this very strong feminine association with the heart. And at the same time, it does have this, like, as we were saying when you're using your symbols book, referencing that before, we see the flaming heart, right? That's a very common symbol, the solar element, the heart on fire connected with the fire element. And then the symbols book said it has the downward triangle as the symbol too, which you mentioned is the water symbol for the water element. And it's both. It both is a flame with life and with the will to live and with the force of life. And it is pumping the life blood, which is basically in rhythm with the tides and the sea and the moon and all these things. And so it has that bipolarity, which I think makes it a more interesting symbol and does not exclude it from being one thing or the other. Um, and I just find it very good. Like, this is a problem we meet in tarot constantly. I'm sure we meet it in astrology a lot too. Astrology has more time to have figured it out. But in tarot, there are some people who are just so angry about the idea that the feeling side or the intuitive function can be associated with the wands. It should be the cups, because intuition is like a feminine thing, and like, and blah, blah, blah. And I always get these people who are like very mad, and I'm like, well, I whatever, like whatever you want to, you can associate whatever you want to it. We don't have to exclude possibilities just because there's someone said this or someone said that one time. I think it makes it more interesting that way. To have, and something else that just came to mind is I'm finishing up Rachel Pollack's A Walk Through the Forest with Souls. I just finished it last night. And in like this last chapter or two, she talks about the Kundalini energy and chakras. And she says that the midpoint, the chakral midpoint, is the heart chakra. We have the 3 lower chakras, and we have the 3 upper chakras, and then the heart is that midpoint. I really like that idea because we can think of this, the heart really being the central location in the meeting place between duality as well. So these are just some things I'm going through.
No, I love that. It's beautiful. And, to kind of expand on this idea of fire and water, I think there's something really interesting there, because the heart biologically is responsible for our circulation, and circularity, to me, immediately I'm thinking of like the rhythms of the tides and the symbol of water and the symbol of the circular kind of face of the full moon. And it immediately keys us into this solilunar split, that having that downward pointing triangle connecting to the element of water, also symbolizing the sun in a kind of crude form, right? I wish I knew more about the ways that we arrived at the depiction of the sun as like the little bubble. I'm sorry, the heart is like the little bubble cartoon heart.
I
I
wish
don't
I knew
know.
that
Do you know
too.
about that? Yeah.
I don't. We
But
should have
we
researched it.
don't. We know so many things,
Terrible.
but we didn't
know
look
that.
that
Hey,
up.
if you know that, listener, can you tell us
Tell
about it?
us.
Tell us on Instagram or something. Go
We
let
wanna
us know. Comment on it on one of our things and tell us about the heart and how it
I'm
became a
sure it's
bubble.
easily findable. My brain. But anyway, I think that it's kind of a beautiful idea, because the heart we want our hearts to be like steadfast and brave and
Yeah,
devoted and kind of like pure and focused. And
right.
the heart can have this Martian quality to it that I think is really all about like the fire and the heat and the blood.
Yeah.
In medical astrology, literally, the heart is associated with the sign Leo. Leo is also associated with fire, and the heart pumps the blood. Blood is associated with Mars. So we have these like interesting fiery overlap situations. But to kind of go back to what I was trying to say, imagining like our blood as this kind of circular ocean moving
Yeah.
through the body in rhythm
Love
with the
that.
rhythm of the heartbeat feels like it puts us even closer to seeing the true dual nature of the heart
Yeah.
between water and fire, which I think is really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that kind of brings us back to like what Hillman was kind of saying. He has like these 3 aspects of the heart, and I think that we can kind of pull out the mechanical heart, right? And say like this is sort of a different thing. This is a literal experience of the heart that's not only symbolic. But the other 2, then we have the Coeur de Lion, the lion heart, and then we have the Augustine heart, which he calls it, which is the contemplative heart. Why can I never say that word? I always want to say contemplative, and it's not that. Contemplative. Contemplative.
Wow.
I'm
We
having
have
a moment.
master's degrees and we are doing good.
Contemplative heart. That side of the heart feels so much more attached to softness, whereas the lion heart is so ferocious and so lustful, right? Wants to live. And I think that we can move into that idea of the heart being tender, right? And fragile.
Vulnerable. Yeah.
Yes, which is very interesting, and more receptive to mysticism. right? Like with the mystical heart is something that when we think about the sacred heart, as I mentioned earlier, it's this flaming heart. It is filled with divine love. It is also crowned with thorns. It represents the passion of the Christ, which is right this willingness to suffer and to be wounded. And through that, it still like is bright with divine mercy and love, etc. I think that the heart being receptive and open is a very big symbol that we see in any kind of mystical poetry. Like Rumi is obsessed with the image of the heart kind of being this door sort of a thing. And I really love that idea of the heart being this tender portal in some way to something that is deep within us and beyond us. Whenever I have clients in the very beginning of my session, I know that people come into my session obviously with a lot of things on their mind. They're just like, I want to talk about this and I want to think about that and I'm worried about that, etc. In the very beginning of my session, I have them think about it all. I tell them, go think about that stuff. Let it really into your brain, let it bounce around, let it be really annoying. And then we're going to very slowly pull ourselves down into the place of the heart. And we're going to sit with the heart place and be there. And it is actually really interesting. I hear from a lot of clients, I'm doing it with them. So, I'm not like watching them do it, but I hear from a lot of people afterwards, they'll be like, that was so weird that worked so well. That I actually felt like the drop out of this kind of mental hyperactivity into this sort of receptive place, that it felt open. And I think that's what we think, the open heartedness. This is what we're grasping for all the time. How do we open the heart to receive something from outside of ourselves? And I find that to be very mystifying to me, how we do that and how we find that open-heartedness. This brings me back to the Hillman a little bit, because something that Hillman talks about is the thought of the heart. He believes that this is a locale for thinking, for thought. It's a different kind of thought than our mentalization sort of thought. This is what he's establishing as the primary principle of the heart, that the thought of the heart is the thought of images, that the heart is the seat of the imagination, that imagination is the authentic voice of the heart, so that if we speak from the heart, we must speak imaginatively. And he never ever just tells us what he means by imagination, which is really frustrating, because I think that when we think about imagination, we think like daydreaming and like making up stories and that kind of imagination. I don't think that's what he means. Certainly could be part of it, but I think that he really means something that is connected to the archetypal, to like the imagination, the ability to be with image, right? The image, the symbol, right? And to sit with that. And I think that is what the heart can do. It can sit with symbol and it can connect in this contemplative way, this feeling way that is imaginative. And I just find that idea to be so pretty. And I think that whenever I'm talking about the heart, I want it to be pretty. I want to have a pretty conversation. And I want it to be just so delightful and special and soft. And that's like where I want to go in a feeling way with the heart, which is just interesting for me to notice.
That is interesting for you, because I think that of the two of us, I usually am diving headlong into the feeling function, and you're my thinking function rock. So it's very cute that you're offering that, whereas I'm over here sitting and thinking and listening to you and thinking deeply about how the heart can be so difficult and so poisonous. And so I want to talk about that.
We swapped personalities for a moment.
Honestly, everyone, the last thing I did before I got on this call was I in the dark in my bedroom ran into the corner of my bed and cut open my thigh. And I have these brand new tights that have flowers on them. And I ripped them open and I ripped my leg open. I was bleeding everywhere. And I was like cursing my heart for pumping my blood. And I was very angry. I was like, why is this happening? Why have I been forsaken?
Your tights are beautiful. That's really quite a shame.
You know what? They're ruined. So goodbye to them. And this is how everything is going. Anyway, I think that what you're offering is really important. And I think that the imaginative capacity of the heart takes us in the direction of, yes, imagining possibility, imagining opportunity, and, romance or fantasy, or just like connection, which is the Venusian function. Venus wants to relate and kind of, be in harmony with her world.
Right.
I think that the heart also being so vulnerable and so delicate makes it really, really, again, like available for being a little bit getting twisted in itself, which is an important,
Three of
right?
Swords.
The Three of Swords is a great, great
That's
example.
what it's
And
all about.
so,
Yeah.
yes, that's beautiful. So keeping that image in mind, one of the, like, the heart is, yes, all over poetry. The heart is the poet's symbol. Poets move from their heart space. It's very, very true. And I think that in all of my reading, one of the most heart-centered texts that I've read of late is Shakespeare's Winter's Tale, which is just a story about a king who goes mad because he believes that his wife is being unfaithful to him, and he just kind of causes the downfall of his whole family line. And
Yeah.
it's a really weird play because it's a
One of the most
comedy
underrated
and a
Shakespeare
drama.
plays.
It's a late one, so people don't people don't really think about it or write about it at all because it's very considered to be uneven. It's not like a straight shot
Yeah.
like Othello or Romeo and Juliet or whatever, but
Yeah.
the writing is beautiful, and then
Yeah.
the kind of archetypal and mythic content is really, really potent. So
Yeah.
in this play, there's a king. His name is Leontes, and I think he's the king of Sicily, and he is, you know, convinced that his wife Hermione has been unfaithful to him, that the child that she's carrying is actually his best friend's, and all this drama ensues. And he kind of goes mad at a certain point, blaming the planets for striking poison into his veins. But he has this fabulous speech about his heart being struck with tremor cordis, which is just like a heart attack or a heart tremor. And he continues to describe the way that from the heart, his blood is turning to jelly in his veins, and there's a hardening of the heart because from what he has perceived through his eyes, he is experiencing something in the physical, and it's transforming his sense of love and reality. And he really does take down his whole world based on something that's not true. So the heart is impressionable. And the heart has this alchemical quality to it that it can
Yeah.
be really transformative in terms of what it yields for our experience. So I wanted to bring that in because, yes, the heart is softness and lushness and the Venusian, but our hearts break, our
Yeah.
hearts become ill. And that is one of those ways that maybe the heart is divided against itself, longing for connection, but actually experiencing rejection or denial of love or something like that. So that's my Venus and Scorpio contribution for the day. And I'm happy with that. But I think that also in the Hillman, he brings in the idea of sulfur. And
Yeah.
I'm not an expert in alchemy by any means, but I'm pretty sure that sulfur is one of the qualities of like the alchemical process. Am I right to think
It's
that?
in the prima materia. Yeah, it's
Okay.
one of the three aspects of the prima materia.
Yeah, right. So the transformation of that like experience of the alchemical experience is also, one of the ingredients is rooted in the heart. And I think that that is an interesting place of, of thinking about change in our emotional
Yeah.
experiences. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's all really good. I think that the idea of the heart being a alchemical vessel. I mean, it's basically an alembic. It's a
Yeah.
chamber, right,
Yeah.
in which stuff material enters and will get transformed in some way, reinfused with stuff, and then get pumped back out. So it is literally the alembic, the chamber of
Mm.
transformation. I think that's a very beautiful picture of the heart. And I also think that the idea of the heart's fragility is something that's really, it's so contrary to the idea of the lion heart. It's so interesting to me of the
Hmm.
ferociousness of the heart. I certainly think of, like, one of the cards I think of associated with the heart the most, even though there's no reason for this, is the strength card.
Hmm.
Um,
I
because
see it. Yeah.
it has both aspects to it. It has this like wildness and this ferociousness represented by the lion, which we just had an episode about. If you haven't listened to it, plugging
Hmm.
ourselves. And then we have the woman in white, dressed in roses and in garlands of flowers, bringing in the softness and the feeling. And I think that that's something that's very cool, and beautiful to kind of locate that. Um, and I think, taking a second to talk about that Three of Swords too, I think it's a really commonly misunderstood card. Not that I'm like the gatekeeper of all tarot cards, but I have a very strong
You're
opinion
my
about it.
gatekeeper of all tarot cards.
I just have a very strong thought about what this card represents, and I think that a lot of times it gets too simplified into, oh, my heart's broken. Bad things have happened to me, and someone shattered my heart, which is what we feel, and it's horrible. But I think that an aspect to that and the brokenness of the heart, the fragility of the heart, is in its exchange with the mind. It's an exchange
Because of the
with,
swords.
yeah, because of the swords. The swords are this, as you said, we twist ourselves up. But I don't think it's the heart twisting ourselves up. I think it's our trying to rationalize pain that twists us up. Trying to rationalize our suffering and our heartbrokenness, and trying to say, what should I have done? Why did this happen to me? This is unfair, and these very valid thoughts and experiences, but that are not actually, I think, of the heart a lot of the times. They're of our stress to try to figure it out and get out of the pain. The heart has the capacity for pain, and yet it does not shatter. I think we that's one of our terms we talk about all the time. It's like, oh, my heart shattered. A heart can't shatter, right? Like it's muscle. It only gets stronger unless you know unless you have heart disease or something. Which Hillman, did you read that part yet in the book
Yeah,
where
he's
he's very
like, to
smartly
keep my
like,
ticker running, I take it for a jog. I'm like, look at you.
yeah. I
Just
was,
such a
I was
weirdo.
like, did he get diagnosed with high cholesterol or something, and then decide to write this book? It feels to me like he has like a very strong reason for being like, he has a point where he's like, we all like, heart disease is the number one killer, and there's a reason for that, and it's because we all have no understanding about what the heart is as a symbol. But I think that the heart is not as fragile as we all think it is. I think we have lost somewhat, or we don't trust our capacity for suffering. This is not to say suffering is good or beautiful, and I personally do think suffering can be very beautiful. I'm a Scorpio, as I've said, so this is my perspective. But I think that we have a capacity that the mind is weaker in many ways than the heart. I do think, it does not have the capacity to hold what it doesn't understand. Whereas the heart can. It can hold the tension of it. And that's sort of the challenge there, is, can we hold the tension of what we feel and what the experience is and what the image is and what the fear is and all of the complexity, and not try to solve the problem with the mind, who cannot rationalize its way out of something that doesn't have a rationale to it. So I think that that's something I always want to rescue from this idea of the fragility of the heart. That's not to say that heartbrokenness is not extremely real. I think we all have a story of someone in our family or someone's cousin who their partner died and then they died of a broken heart. I do think that it's possible for the heart to, let go, and for that it to be fragile. I just don't know if we're always as fragile as we think we are.
I think that the mind always tells us a story that makes us want to stop or give up before the
Yeah.
body or the heart actually needs to do that. And so
Yeah.
there is the need to separate mentation from like emotion. And when I
Yeah.
think about the Three of Swords as well, I always kind of would tell us, if I'm reading for somebody, the story
Hmm.
that yes, the heart is pierced with the swords of sorrow
Hmm.
and the mind, but the heart itself keeps beating. And so, what does
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
mean for us, right? So,
Hmm.
I think that that's fascinating. And one of the other, I think, maybe expressions of this that we can draw from James Hillman's ideas on the heart is that, he speaks pretty bluntly about the fact that we live in a world that has kind of relegated the heart to its biological function, to
Yeah.
thinking about heart disease before what the heart truly symbolizes for us, which is
Right.
this sense of centrality. If we think about the heart as the kind of center of the macro and microcosm, or,
Mm-hmm.
the thing that burns, for love and for purity. We have to remember that when we leave behind the definition of the heart that is of the natural world and of the sun, moon, and stars and of the rhythms of nature, we're also denying ourselves connection with that part of ourselves.
Yeah.
The heart is not just a muscle to be exercised and studied and, cholesterol medication to be fed to, although
Mm-hmm.
those things are important. Take care of yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But, we have to realize that we cannot medicalize and biologize our way out of the deep experience of having a heart and having our hearts feel and be broken and also filled with wonder at the same time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I loved that concept in this book.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is the perfect place to wrap up our conversation on the heart. I love your heart.
I love your heart.
It's very special to me.
You're my Valentine, though, so I'll send you a Valentine.
Oh my goodness. Let's do that. I'll send you a Valentine too.
You heard it here first, folks. We're Valentines.
If I tell my husband that you said that you're my Valentine, he's actually going to be very jealous. And he's
Oh,
going to
no.
pretend that he's not, but he is. He's going to be jealous.
Well, did he say that to you yet?
No. Get out of here.
Okay, well then, everyone's got to get on the train
I'm
of
claimed.
Valentines.
I will do it. I will do it.
Great, starting fights and talking about hearts. Thank you, everyone, for witnessing that. And let's turn now to a dream.
If you're enjoying this podcast, we encourage you to leave a review or learn more about how you can support us on Mighty Networks, where you can get access to some exciting exclusive offerings. Or you can connect with us by sharing a symbolic experience, whether from a dream or synchronicity, for us to explore on the show. Thank you to today's sharer, and please tell us your symbolic experience or connect with us on our website, sorormysticapodcast.com.
Are you a small business looking to reach a targeted audience of people interested in all things esoteric? If this sounds like you, Soror Mystica would love to invite you to become an ad partner. We offer a highly tailored audience of mindful, curious, depth-seeking listeners, and we would be delighted to showcase your business and offerings to new hearts and new minds. Simply fill out an advertiser application form at our website, linked in the show notes below, or navigate to sorormysticapodcast.com/advertise with us.
Hello, my lovers of tarot, astrology, and the symbolic. Would you like to go on even deeper dives into topics that are even more niche and specialized and fascinating? Perhaps you'd like to explore angels in the tarot, or beasts in your dreams, or the thresholds of astrology. This is just a sampling of the bonus episodes we have over at our cloister. So go in the show notes and click the link and join us in even deeper conversations. We really hope to see you there. All right, so for our dream this week, we're actually going to talk about my dream, because I've had now a certain symbol come up twice. And as I like to make up this rule that I did indeed make up, symbols come in threes.
I love it.
Don't quote me on that. Or well, you can quote me on that, but don't go off and tell people this is the ultimate truth.
Yes.
I think it happens. I think it's real. It is from just experience of paying attention to stuff. But anyway, it's my rule that I've made up. So I've had the symbol of the ring happen a few times. And yes, for those people who here know that I'm a fan of Lord of the Rings, that is not the way we're going with the ring today. We're going a different way. So the first dream I had about a ring was basically just that my mom passed away a couple years ago. And so for the last 2 years, I've been in I don't even know how many years it is at this point, 3 years, I guess, 2.5. I've been in the chaos of like sorting her life and doing all this stuff. And it's a lot of stuff. And so I had a dream that they were going to tear down her house, and I hadn't sorted out all her stuff before they were going to tear it down. And I was like, I don't have any time to do this anymore. And so there was just too much stuff to sort through. And I went into the attic and I found a ring that I learned was like purchased or given to me at birth. And it was like some kind of like birthright gift that I had received. And I kind of said, this is all I need to take. And so that was a very interesting, special little symbol there. And then a couple nights ago, I had this dream that I was on my way to a party, and this had like the vibes of me being like a 13-year-old girl having absolutely no friends and sitting at my own cafeteria table at lunch, because that was me. It was very sad. And so I had like this, like, oh, I don't belong here feeling, and I'm very uncomfortable. And I bumped into this woman who is in real life. She's the wife of my friend. In this dream, she was played by, what's her name? Ayo Edebiri? Is that her name?
It's Edebiri, yeah.
Edebiri. So in this dream, my friend's wife was played by Ayo Edebiri. She is on The Bear, for anybody who watched that show. It's a very good show. Have you seen The Bear?
Yes, love it.
Oh, it's so good. It's so amazing. That episode where they're doing Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever at the mom's house. Was that extremely triggering?
I have panic attack. Yeah, extremely triggering.
I think for like pretty much everybody, it was extremely triggering. Anyway, great episode. Watch the show. So she was standing in for some reason for this person, and I like her a lot. And she was like standing in the middle of the street, and she was like, I have to go to the party. And I was like, yeah, I'm on my way there too. And then she dropped something in this street grate, just like in the middle of the street. And that's funny for Christina, because we were going on a weekend trip, and I dropped my keys down a grate right as we were getting in the car. And the funny thing about that is that for weeks beforehand, I had had a weird obsessive panic about dropping my keys in a grate. And I don't know where that came from. I had never feared that in my life before, because I definitely psychicked that was going to happen to me. And then it quite randomly happened. And then a man came with a hook, like out of a
man who had clearly been
underworld.
watching us, because as soon as you dropped your key from across the street, he hollered and he was like, "Do you ladies need help?" And we were like, "Yeah, but how did you know?" Like, I was still processing the fact that the keys were in the grate and like trying to think about shoving my arm into it.
He was definitely some kind of a god in disguise, some kind of a trickster, like entity who came to test us. But he did help us get the keys out of the grate, and then he like disappeared and he wouldn't take our money. And I was like, this is how I get denied entry to heaven. He didn't take my dollar or something. I don't know. Anyway. But yes, so she dropped these things down the grate. And so I went, and she told me that she had dropped 4 rings for her 4 daughters. In real life, this person that she was associated with does not have 4 daughters. She has 2. So that number 4 was obviously some kind of significant number.
Yeah.
And she was looking, and the cars are coming, and I'm like, oh, you got to hurry up here. And so I ended up having to jump down into the grate with her and dig around in the muck and the gross stuff for these rings. And we ended up finding 3 of them and couldn't find the 4th. And I had this little pinky ring that was a little girl's size, I guess, that had a snake. It was shaped like a snake. And so I took that and I gave that to her as a replacement. And the detail I forgot is that there were gold rings, as if wedding rings. So, so that was my dream. And I'm interested in it because of the symbol of the ring, and the wedding ring. And in both of these dreams, the symbol points to something of being a child, being a little girl. So like in the first one, it was given to me as a baby. Like this was the birthright, like, item I was given. And in this, it was like the daughters of my friend essentially need these gold rings for some reason. So that symbol of the ring itself is very interesting as jewelry, as something precious, but then also it being a gift in some way, or being something attached to like a little girl. And being like recovered, right? That's the other theme in the dreams. In the first one, I recover it just because I'm wandering around looking for whatever I want to take. In the second dream, I recover it from like the muck and the grate because it's been dropped. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on my dream?
I have thoughts. So I am very interested I know that you have connections with the 4 because there are 4 rings, but I think it's really interesting that only 3 rings are recovered, and then the 4th one that you're supplementing,
the missing 4th,
the missing 4th, but also the snake to me is such a symbol of the feminine and of like that sense of inner knowing. Like serpents are so. Why haven't we done a snake episode yet? But yeah, so the serpent is such a rich symbol for transformation. And so the 4 are kind of like, transformed into triad plus a snake. And I think that
Yeah.
that is absolutely fascinating. So
Yeah.
does that have something to do with your sense of like, the inner feminine knowing? Does this have something to do with your own sense of like fertility and generation of
Mm.
like resources or stability? Wedding rings are obviously symbolic of like,
Yeah.
betrothal, but also kind of security. And so I
Mm-hmm.
have questions about what that kind of means for you.
Yeah.
In my research for my prophetic asteroids class that I've been teaching, Cassandra's story is kind of like uh, started with a snake. Like her parents leave her and her brother in a temple of Apollo, and they go to a dinner party. And when they come back, they find the children intertwined with serpents, and the serpents are licking their ears. And they're
Mm.
given the gift of prophecy from the snakes that are licking their ears. And
That
so,
is so creepy and great.
yeah, that plus like, I mean, anyway, I won't digress, but it's very interesting. So I've been thinking about snakes and
Yeah.
knowing,
Yeah.
and the prophetic voice. And so, you know, the snake being the missing fourth is an
Yeah.
interesting idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What does
I
this
only just
resonate?
like connected the missing fourth now. So for those of
Mm-hmm.
you who don't know this idea, this is an idea that comes from Jung, the idea of the missing fourth. So he believed that the Trinity was incomplete, that it felt like it was missing an aspect. And originally he believed that the missing aspect was the devil. He kind of insinuated that. In other writings, he kind of insinuates that it might be Mary. And I like that better, obviously. But the idea that there's this incompletion because 4 archetypally is the number of completion, right? Of
Mm-hmm.
something coming to like its 4 corners, its 4 elements, its full
Stability.
structure.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And so I really like that idea of the missing fourth, the snake being so definitely connected to the ancient goddess. Certainly for me, who has done a lot of research on these things, I kind of got the image in my mind. Which goddess is it? Is the Cretan goddess, who's the one holding the 2 snakes like
Yes.
this? The Minoan
Yes.
goddess,
Yes.
which
It's by Noah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that always pops up in my mind whenever I think about snakes. That image of her, and so interesting actually because we're talking about hearts. I've had this like creative project I've been working on like my entire life, and the 2 core symbols that I work with in this project is the heart and the snake. And so that's just a little synchronicity that they came up
Wow.
today.
And how
Yeah,
have you been dealing? Like, you recently have a kind of creative surge with that
yeah,
project?
yeah,
So that's
yeah. I have.
interesting too.
Yeah. And then
But
there's
I,
in the later part of the dream, there is a baby too that like just randomly
mm,
appears and then I like almost kill by accident because
mm,
my dreams have to be funny or else why have them? And I think that you bringing up fertility is also interesting and seeing that kind of tie of the wedding ring and then the snake being a symbol of fertility and then also seeing a baby a little bit later in the dream.
mm-hmm.
That definitely clicks for me. I'm definitely going to think about that.
Yeah. I also love that you have to go down into the muck to find the
Yeah,
rings and
it's
recover them.
horrible.
But it's like you're going down into your subconscious. It's
Yes,
perfect,
but
actually.
it's not
Mm-hmm.
it's not even fully submerged. It's just in the gross, icky stuff under the street.
Yep. Where we
It's
shoved our
like
arms to try to get your keys.
do you remember how I had like a full rash and
Yep. You had a
completely
bruise actually on
I had a
your
massive
arm.
bruise. It was really, really bad. Well, I will go all in apparently. So I think that that's really interesting. I think that the idea too of the the wedding ring, that it is a wedding ring,
Mm-hmm.
that was
Specific. Yeah.
it was a very specific symbol to me because I mean they're little girls, they weren't actually getting married. I associated that they were like must be for a play or something,
Mm-hmm.
some kind of little gift for them. But yeah, this like idea of like being bound to something and being betrothed to it, and there was no like little boys or other people that I in the dream that they were going to be connected to. So it really seemed to be about them and kind of their receiving of these gifts of these rings and what that
Mm-hmm.
what that symbolized for them. And yeah, I don't know. I think that this idea of the gift of the ring itself, symbol of circularity,
Mm-hmm.
again, the circle, wholeness. It's something that we associate with the ring, and preciousness, These were gold rings in particular there. In the other dream, it was some kind of gemstone ring, but it still was like some kind of precious gemstone. So that, yeah, those are
Eternity is like a ring symbol. Eternity is another word that comes to mind. Yeah, I don't know. I'm very stuck on this idea that the 4 was destabilized, turned into a 3 plus a snake. And I feel like it's about you being in relationship with the inner triad. I don't know why I feel so
I
strongly
like
about
that a
this.
lot.
But
I like it a lot. I think that I had a dream not too long ago also about going to the goddess's temple and stuff. So that's been a little theme coming up too.
Yeah.
So I really like that. And I think that the ring being the symbol of the circularity and the idea of wholeness as a circle rather than the square of the 4 is an also interesting juxtaposition. And then the completion of the 4 with the serpent and bringing in this other like very feminine archetypal element. A lot of stuff for me to ponder now. Thank you for helping me work through that one. My analyst is going to be thrilled because I'm going to have already done my homework.
Yeah, she can send me an invoice. She can send something my way. Just kidding.
Cute. Okay. Thank you everybody for being here and talking about hearts with us. We hope that if you do celebrate Valentine's Day and you care about it, that it's delightful and wonderful and very loving. And if you don't, that's okay too.
If you want to burn some stuff, you should
burn it all down. You can buy some chocolates and little heart boxes and just smash them with a hammer and we'll do it with you.
Sounds great.
Yep, sounds good. And I don't think we have any other announcements other than join our book club, which is going to be, as we said, at the end of February. So that will be very fun to talk about it. And you can get Till We Have Faces now and read it. And then if you want to join the book club right before we have our meeting, you can do it then too. So
we'd love to see you there, though. I'm really excited to talk about it. So
it was such a fun little meeting last time. I absolutely loved it. Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Your hearts are precious, and we'll see you next time.
Bye. Thank you for joining us in our conversation today.
Please consider supporting the podcast by leaving a review and following Soror Mystica wherever you listen.
You can also become a more active supporter and a member of the Soror Mystica community by joining us on our Mighty Networks platform.
If you have a symbolic experience that you'd like to share with us for the podcast, you can tell us all about it at sorormysticapodcast.com.
The music for this podcast is written and performed by me, Mariana Lewis, with special thanks to Stefan Lewis. You can connect with both Christina and myself on Instagram and get to know our work by clicking on the links in the show notes.
As the alchemical motto goes, as above, so below, as within, so without.
May this ancient wisdom continue to guide you deeper.
Until next time, take good care.